summary of my worldview is bureaucracy is bad, all else equal.
Do you think you're...
And it harms the very people it's supposed to help.
Do you think you're radical?
In the sense that America's radical, sure.
No,
I mean, America is a radical idea.
Of course. But what I'm saying is, like, do you think that your viewpoint on what needs to be changed is significantly greater, more radical, more extreme? I know these words are like loaded, and I don't mean them to be loaded. What I'm trying to say is, like, I think that what you're suggesting is a massive change.
Yeah.
And do you feel it is?
Yeah, I do. I think a massive change is required.
Yeah.
To set our country back on the right track, to remain, I think we already are, but to remain the greatest country known to the history of man. I do believe that. And I think that the American Revolution was pretty radical, by the way, too.
I like
America's
radical.
birth. America's birth was radical, right? The idea that we, the people, get to self-govern, that was a crazy idea. Right? The idea that your genetics and your lineage don't matter, but the best person ought to get the job. That is a radical idea. Or that any opinion, no matter how heinous to you or me it might seem, that any opinion gets to be expressed publicly, freely. That is a radical idea. I believe all of those things. So, that might make me radical. I think I'm fine with that because America is a radical nation.
No, I'm not saying it is criticism. Yeah. I just oftentimes I see your philosophy and I think it's very digestible in the things that you're saying, and that you're using language that we're familiar with, right? And tapping into our identities and what we are as Americans. But the change that you're suggesting, I think, significantly shifts the course of the country. And that is, you said this last time you were on the pod, like, we, what is it? We should have the country we deserve, or something like that. This was Thomas Jefferson's idea. It's like, for better or worse. The
government we elect is the government we deserve.
Exactly. For better or for worse, right? And I think that's a very brave position to be in. I think a lot of times when elected officials win, they're forced to make certain decisions and they reflect and they go, you know what? It really ain't that bad. Like, maybe we'll try to move it 2% this direction, 5% this direction, 7%.
And so this is why, man, this is actually really important to me as I think about my next step. We were talking about this a little bit before. I don't just want to win by a little bit and, check the box of being a governor or whatever. I want to win by such a decisive mandate to be able to actually do the hard things, right? If you want to be an incremental changer in politics, you could do that by temporarily sitting in a seat with a narrow margin, and then it's ping pong when somebody else is in charge of the different view. It kind of goes incrementally in the other direction. But if you want to revitalize an actual state or a country, you need a decisive mandate to do it.
And how do you get that?
Well,
you have to tap into cultural necessity. These people have to feel that you can deliver the change that they desperately need. Like, what's happened, I think, not throughout entire American history, but when America is doing well, when poor people can feed themselves and pay their rent, there's enough magic and distraction in this country where they don't need to rebel, right? And that's kind of like the perfect spot for the really wealthy, where they're like, okay, we can get really rich and the poor people aren't going to
There's no revolution.
Exactly, right? There's that's perfect, right? And then every once in a while, you can see the desperation of the poor because the Luigi Mangione walks behind the healthcare CEO, blows his head off, and then the internet is like, hey, it'd be like that sometimes. And to me, the reaction was indicative of people being desperate.
A lot of deep-seated frustration.
Yes. So how do you tap into that desperation? And I'm going to use this word sell loosely, and then sell them a solution to that desperation. That, and I think this is kind of what happened, and we can get into like what happened with Trump, but I think a lot of people couch their support in Trump with these like they're how do I phrase it? Like they try to be noble in their support, right? Especially on the coasts. They go, I want to stop foreign wars. I really care about the migration issue. They don't, right? Their kid comes home from school and they're like, why am I'm a girl, but I think I'm a boy. And they're like, who the fuck told you that shit, right?
Tired of that,
And I think that it's the cultural issue, but they feel uncomfortable saying that because of public scrutiny. So they go, we got to stop these wars. And you're like, well, where are the wars? They're over there, but we got to stop that. How can you tap into what Americans are feeling, even if it's not what they're saying? Like when I saw the reaction of Luigi Mangione, I was like, oh, Americans are feeling resentment and extreme hostility to the healthcare sector.
Sure.
I think to government.
Sure.
I think to, what else would you say?
I think the
almost
government,
every major institution.
I would say towards their manner of work, the way that they're actually taught to the idea that you could get ahead through your own hard work. People feel like that's an illusion.
They're not feeling like that's possible anymore.
Through higher education, through the debt you take on through higher education.
Cost of living.
We've all been part of a generation where people are taught that you go to college for 4 years, you load up yourself with debt, and somehow you get a head start in the American dream when it hasn't worked out that way. I think the first way to do it is to admit the failure.
So this is good.
Admit the failure.
But this is really good.
And be honest.
Yeah, but this is really good.
Yeah.
Admitting the failure is very important.
Yep.
And I think to Trump's credit, like I think there's a version of this, and I don't know how much of this is marketing or actual truth, but like admitting the failures of your country. Like if there is something that we, like the Gulf of Tonkin situation, like we should acknowledge that. And we'd be like, hey, we did some foul shit, got us into a war. A lot of people died. That's bad. You have every right to have a lack of like a faith and trust in our government. We want to reinstill that. And the way we reinstill that is accountability. We don't gaslight you and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. We go, hey, I did some goofy shit.
Yeah.
That's Elon. Say you did some goofy shit. Don't go, oh, you guys are making a big deal and nothing, because that's what Democrats did for 4 years.
Totally.
Don't be the exact version of the people that you fought back against.
I think that the ability to honestly have the humility to say, here's where we screwed up. And it's easy to point to the other side's screw ups. It's a lot harder to your own. It's a lot harder, but
that's my concern.
Our own screw ups. But then it's not just admitting that failure or the failures where we've gone wrong. But I believe the right path is not to just stop there, because I think there's a risk there.
Okay.
The risk that I see there is that we fall into the trap then of saying, have we all been screwed over? Our generation been screwed over. Yes, we have been screwed over. Yes. But if you stop there, then it's like you fall back into the trap. Exactly.
Yes.
Of thinking that my fate is somebody else's fault.
100%.
That my plight is somebody else's responsibility.
And that's what we did. We took accountability. Or that's what I think maybe the left did a little bit. They took all this accountability, which is honorable. Hey,
America wasn't perfect.
And we're not perfect. We did some horrible shit. And then we stopped at that.
Stop there.
And that's not it. It's, hey, we fucked up. How are we going to make it better?
And I don't want the American right to stop there either, which is to say that the
American right is the opposite. It's we never did anything wrong. And that's a problem. It has to be.
That was kind of the old, there's an older version. Then there's a newer spin, which is, no, there's other stuff that we're being screwed over by. Our government screwed us over. All of which is, much of which is true, right? But a lot of these systems, for example, we talked about the H-1B system is badly broken. It sucks. It needs to be gutted. But
don't stop there.
We can't, your fate, and I'll say this in ways that speak to everybody 360 degrees. The number one factor that determines whether you achieve your goals is not your race, your religion, your gender, your sexuality, the climate, the weather, or somebody else from another country.
What is it? Christ.
It is you. Oh. Well,
I'm trying to win you Ohio, bro. I'm trying my hardest. I'm really trying my hardest.
Well, I believe that God lives in you, right? And so those two merge.
So do the priests.
And in a certain it's like in basketball, like he gives his own alley. Exactly. No, but it's like the dunk contest. It's like bounce it off the backboard and take your own.
But go on.
That's good. You don't need the guy feeding
it. It does live in you. It does live in you. Yes.
And so, this is probably even a really deeper discussion, as I do think a revival of that type of conviction in ourselves. Some of that involves revival of faith, and I don't think the government should be in charge of doing this at all, but I do think a revival of our self-confidence,
so this is
revival of conviction in ourselves as individuals and as a country. And even in states like Ohio, where people have fallen into the trap of believing, we're number 38 where people move in and out.
Yeah.
Restoring that pride as an American, as an Ohioan, as a citizen, as a member of a family, revival of conviction in self. That's what Donald Trump, I think, is doing at the level of the nation. I mean, people could debate about Greenland or anything else, but the idea of manifest destiny, the idea that we're the pioneers and the explorers, that gives us back some of that self-confidence, that juice of conviction. That's the second step we got to take, is once acknowledge that there are a lot of factors that have contributed, that we're not your own individual level mistakes. But if we just pause there, you're taught to see yourself as a victim, but to say that, no, we're committed to actually overcoming those barriers at a young age. So every 4-year-old, when he chooses a preschool, or his parents choose a preschool for him, is choosing the best possible one. And if you can't afford it, you have the money from shutting down the bureaucracy that you save the money to put it in the pockets of those parents to choose. But after that, your fate is in your hands, and we believe in you because you believe in you.
Real quick.
That's what we need to get back to.
So real quick, I think this is really good, because a lot of times we get into this like black and white dichotomy, like these guys are the bad guys, these guys are the good guys. We never listen to each other. But there is a version where if you're more, I don't even want to use the term centrist, but there's a version where you go, hey, I think it's honorable, I think it's noble to recognize our failures. I also think that what we're doing over here, which is, shining a light on our successes and what we can do to improve the country, and it doesn't matter which side, it's the combination of both of those. It's acknowledging the failures of the people because the people feel failed, right? They feel like the government has failed them. They feel like these institutions have failed them. Because they have.
Yeah.
Let's acknowledge that. And then going, we're not going to stop there and let you just complain and whine about all these institutions.
That's good.
We are going to show what's wrong with the institutions, and we're going to give suggestions that we think will make it better. And we believe in our heart they'll make it better. And we are going to try to make them better. I like that because...
So should we expect more of our politicians and our government? Of course we should. But we should also expect more of ourselves and each other.
And give
that
them,
goes in all directions.
But give them something to hope for.
Exactly.
Right?
And the way we expect more of our government is the government, I believe, has actually been in the way of your success. It has been a chief obstacle, whether it's a small business with respect to the regulatory state, whether it is overspending on some parts of education without actually allowing you to choose where you go, housing burdens for new construction that raise new costs. The government has been a burden.
Yeah.
You deserve, as a citizen of this country, to have that government out of your way so you can achieve the maximum of your own potential. But after that, the rest falls on us. And that is a beautiful thing, because this is the country that does not constrain you based on your lineage or your genetics to achieve that. Both of those have to be true. Because if you just do the first without the second, you're back to victimhood culture. If you just do the second without the first, it's just not true. Yeah, exactly.
And you're making people feel like their failures are completely on them.
It's got to be both.
Yeah.
It's got to be both.
And I think that strategy... as you described it right now.
It's grounded in truth. It's not a strategy. It's true.
Sure.
It's true.
I think it's really relatable. And to me, like, obviously I'm in maybe a different situation, right? But I think to somebody who is suffering, who feels like these institutions are not backing them in the way that they need, will then feel, one, validated in their feeling, their frustration, but also feel like they have some hope. Because I don't want you to be like, hey, you're poor because it's their fault, but good luck being poor.
No.
I want people to be like, hey, listen, upward mobility is difficult for you, and there are these institutions that have restricted that, the government being one of them, but we want to fix these things so you can have upward mobility. And if I'm somebody who needs that, I'm going to go, well, yeah, let's try something because this shit ain't working.
Let me give you one idea I'm a fan of, right? In this spirit, because I was going to bring this up earlier.
Gay marriage.
Perfect time. Has nothing to do with this.
Good, okay.
Just making sure.
Damn it, Akaash. Fuck, man. We were almost there.
One day.
We're
going to group divorce.
We're
going to show our wives what a successful marriage can be. We've been together for 11 years. Okay. Go on.
You re-signed the contract.
Yeah,
at 10.
exactly.
That's good.